good evening, and wherever the sun may find you. My name is Walt, and this is Coffee and Concepts on Keystroke Medium. Welcome aboard, folks. Thank you very much for taking a little time out of your morning to sit down with us and kind of have a little bit of a chat about our favorite tasty beverage, and then of course a little bit of reading, writing, or a little bit more. So with that being the case, this morning we are diving into a glorious Guatemalan blend. If you've never had Guatemalan coffee before, it's got a pretty unique taste. Typically, you're looking at something that has a slightly sweeter taste than the average cup of coffee. You almost hints of chocolate or cocoa. Sometimes it's got like a little bit of a creamy taste. Excuse me, especially if you've gone ahead and ground that from the whole bean, you're going to get those more intense flavors as opposed to some coffee that was ground and then maybe put into one of those cool little bags or maybe vacuum sealed. Usually, grinding yourself gets a little bit more out of the bean than something that's sat for a little bit. It's good, it's tasty, and I'm just a huge fan. So that's what I'm attacking this morning. That being the case, we strike back into our discussion of all things literary. And this morning we are talking a little bit about putting a little bit of you into your writing. So there's an old saying that has been in and around the writing community for many moons, and that is write what you know. Of course, write what you know is also a way to say that if you're going to attack a subject and it's something that you're not comfortable with or have experience with, of course you should do your research. One of the great things about today's day and age is that the internet has made it easy to go in and kind of check things out, to do some research on that, to do a little bit of back matter and kind of attack what you see as far as those subjects that might not be familiar to you. We've talked before about Tom Clancy and how he wasn't a military man but did amazing amounts of research. So what are some of the things that you can do as writers that would make your writing more genuine, legitimate, on point? You hear all the time from people who are police officers and military and folks who work in those fields that are highly targeted as instruments of fiction. And they say all the time, I really enjoyed the story until they did this, because that's not how this works. And when you're talking police, typically it's always concerning evidence, how car chases actually work, how they investigate crimes. Those kind of aspects will always be first and foremost in what a police officer sees as downticks in the fiction, things that take them out of the story because they know it's not realistic because they live those lives every day. The same thing with doctors and nurses. You hear all the time, yeah, it's a great show until they go to do medical stuff, or it's a great book until they go to do medical stuff. How you actually do a catheter, how you Corvo saying on the stream that I enjoyed the story until it took a dive into Craps Creek. I enjoyed it until it slammed into a wall. So Guy Anthony DeMarco saying good morning from Facebook. So those things that might be up front and center to an expert, but might be as aware. Good morning, Corvo. Or might not be as aware to a writer getting into those things at all time. I mean, at first. So, for example, and I am going to use my handy dandy blue and red squirt bottle of doom that I use to keep the cats away when we're doing stuff like this. One of the things that you saw that a lot of times in movies and television is the gun up here. And that is because when a gun is placed in next to the ear of the protagonist, it is because they're trying to frame it in the shot to show you that the gun is a centerpiece for tension that is about to happen. And it's so that you get into the frame of the shot for the picture. And that being said, it is the epitome of stupid to put that weapon next to your face like that for many, many, many reasons. And that is one of the things that people who are around weapons for a long time have a tendency to focus on when people who do not go out and experience these things for themselves, they tend to leave these details out, or they put in details that make no sense to someone who has lived that life. In recent, very recently, I begged and pleaded to get into a beta read. Actually, Corvo, we'll take a quick break from that stream of thought, said, I didn't know that. So the gun is brought up for dramatic effect. Yes, there are many, many reasons you do not want to put a firearm right next to your face or next to your ear. The only reason you would do that is if it's a prop. Is unloaded, and you were only putting it there for dramatic effect, to show the audience something dire is about to happen, and that's why the gun is entering the scene along with the main character. Guy Anthony DeMarco from Facebook. I used to volunteer for phlebotomy classes to get poked with needles when I used to teach IT classes in college, which would be an excellent way to get that sensation of what those needles feel like, but also to put emphasis on how a person actually puts a needle into somebody's vein, as opposed to giving medicine subcutaneously or just under the skin, or doing like a deep muscle stick or a lumbar puncture. So I mean, there's all these different things that can get into the equation that a writer might miss if they just think, well, it's a needle, it goes in this way. And there's lots that could be a flavor that is missed on both purpose and accident. So that being said, and actually Lauren Moore coming in saying they had to retrain the police officers back in the 50s to not put the weapon in the shot, since folks were seeing it in movies so much, which is absolutely correct. Recently I begged and pleaded to get myself onto a beta read of a certain author's manuscript. And I commented to the author because one of the things he puts in the book, and the book takes place in the late 80s, early 90s. And one of the things he puts in the book is the smell of the city that it's in. And that there's always this omnipresent scent of like peanuts and refuse, or like human excrement. Been to places like New York and Boston many, many, many times, worked in places like big cities all across the planet. And if it's one thing I've always seen, for some reason, it always smells like pea and peanuts. And that was a great piece of descriptive text for that author to put in, because not only did it show that he had been in those American cities and experienced some of the sights and smells and sounds of those American cities, but it also brought me back and brought me into that scene, because I've been there and smelled those smells and got to encounter those sights. Lauren asking, is it possible to have too many realistic details in your fiction? Well, that's a question for the author themselves. I mean, if you're just going page and page and page of descriptive text, and the main character hasn't even crossed the street yet, then that might be too much. But if you're seeding flavor throughout as that person is moving through the city or moving through the ER, then one of the things, then that descriptive text is probably going in very well. So if the character is moving and the descriptive text is coming in at points to highlight flavor, I think those are the kinds of books I enjoy reading. If I have to read 4 pages about mold and dust, about how it makes the main character sneeze, and the main character hasn't even gotten to the sneezing part yet, that's not going to be a book that holds my attention. So what are some of the things that we can do as authors that will allow us to get some of these sensations and put more realistic sensations in our books? If you're going to write in a city, visit the city. Try out some of the restaurants, talk to some of the people, see what they're like. Are they rude? Are they happy? Do they give a hey, how's it going, bro? Or do you get a as you're trying to walk past somebody into a subway? Try out the vendors, go to shops, go to some of the higher class sections of the city where they have doormen outside of hotels, and go to some of the lower class sections of cities where the restaurants don't have reserved lists. You just sit at a counter and eat. As far as like technical details in your writing, I know that the FBI, as well as most police departments, have done a fantastic job of having a public outreach as well as a media outreach so that they are portrayed positively. You can go into or call your local FBI office, and they would be more than happy to entertain you on a tour and allow you to see how it is they do what they do, so that if you do include the FBI in your manuscript, they know that you got it right. Same thing for local police departments. Many times they will have like a community outreach or an outrider program and allow you to talk to an officer, get the details right. What's a call really like? How long does it take to process evidence? When they cordon off a crime scene, how long does it take before that crime scene is released? Those kind of details. As far as like medical might be a little more difficult, because if those doctors and nurses are actively trying to assist patients, you don't want to get in their way, especially if they have questions. So also check to see if that hospital has a community outreach or a media outreach program that would allow them to be portrayed positively. And in that case, some places might even want to be featured in the work so that it acts like a type of advertising for them. Guy Anthony DeMarco saying Google Street View is a great method to relive details from your visit to areas of a city. He also said that sprinkle in details, smelling the pizza grease at one corner, and at the next one, the smell of vinegar from open pickle barrel at a Jewish deli. So what he's saying is, get those details in and move them along with the character, so that it's not just blocks of huge text where the character doesn't do anything. You're just kind of taking in the scenery. But yeah, so as far as like talking to hospital staff and medical personnel, yeah, absolutely. Get with that community outreach, get with those people who are in that life, and possibly talk to them about sitting down and seeing what actually working in that environment might be like. And you might get a lot of great feedback from those people, as well as the opportunity to view this up close and personal. The same thing can be said for other things, such as if your main protagonist is riding in a helicopter, you could always book a helicopter ride. Never been on a subway? Go to a city, put your restaurant that you're trying to reach somewhere out here, and then combine the two activities, getting to that cool restaurant and then riding the subway. Never fired a firearm? That's not too bad. That's not too hard either. Most states have shooting ranges that will allow you to rent firearms on the property, so that you can experience one type of firearm or another. So, for example, if you have your main protagonist pick up a submachine gun and you've never fired one, rent one. See what it's like. See, engage an expert. Have somebody stand behind you and tell you how the different firing modes work, what the range is like, and why you would use this weapon versus another one. A lot of these things you can just find out on your own with a simple Google search and get into the meat of the matter, as far as finding people, places, and things that you've never done before that you want to include in your story, but might not necessarily have experienced yourself. So let's get those details, get some great coffee, sit down, talk with our peeps and our tribe, and talk about all the reading, writing, and a little bit more. So that being said, make sure to catch Keystroke Mediums live every Monday night with Josh, Scott, and Chuck. They usually kick off at my time. It's usually 9 p.m. Eastern Standard, which, radiates down the line. You can catch them as they talk about all aspects of publishing. You can get in on, of course, Coffee and Concepts every Tuesday, usually around 7:30. But today I have one leg in like a stirrup, so it took me a little longer to get going. We have the Writer's Journey with Lauren and Kayleen, where they take aspects of publishing and bring it to you, the first-time writer and the interested reader. We have Story Time on Monday with Kayleen, and a bevy of other shows that are in and around the great and you'll be there. We should plan something. They are talking about Vegas has a lot of specialized firearm places with rare weapons. Make sure to check out keystrokemedium.com and the Keystroke Medium Facebook group for all that's in the need to know about all your favorite shows on this wonderful network. My name is Walt, and this has been Coffee and Concepts on Keystroke Medium.